Celeb Savant is a career retrospective type interview focusing on singers, actors, and industry experts. Join Barrett Edelstein now as he dives into the entertainment world.
Norwegian-American singer-songwriter Hanna Andréa released her debut single Starlight in 2024. She has cultivated a distinctive sound that merges atmospheric synths, orchestral elements, and layered vocals with a cinematic sensibility. Deeply involved in every stage of the creative process, Hanna approaches music as a storyteller, crafting cohesive bodies of work. This philosophy was evident in her debut LP, Stranded in the Middle, a fully realized project produced when she was 16 years old and accompanied by visual collaborations with northern Norwegian artists. Expanding her creative reach beyond pop, Hanna also wrote the songs for Muse, the Shakespeare Mayhem Musical, a pop-infused theatrical production co-created with Lisa Sanderson. Following a successful premiere at Lincoln Center, the show has been selected as a feature production at the 2026 Edinburgh Festival Fringe. Originally devised at Interlaken Arts Academy, Muse has grown into a full-scale production supported by a team of Broadway professionals. In 2026, Hanna released the single Get Off Your Phone and the EP Braveheart. Up next on Celeb Savant, we've got Hanna Andréa.
Where in the world are you and how are you doing?
I'm in Norway right now, visiting my family, and I'm doing very well, yeah.
Did you grow up in Norway?
I have always lived in the US as like my permanent residence, but I've been going back and forth for like months at a time my whole life. And I went to school here for a little bit on and off when I was younger. So I've definitely spent a lot of time here and consider it like a second home.
At what age, whether as a child or teenager, did you think, okay, I want to be in this creative world? And how did that journey progress?
I have always been very creative. Some of my earliest memories with art were related to ballet, actually. When I was little, we had these like CDs of ballets and I would put them on and then I would like try to copy all their movements and dance in front of the TV, or I would hum my own song and improvise to whatever I was humming. And I took ballet classes starting when I was like 2 or 3 years old, I think. And then also around probably the same time, I would just kind of walk around the house and sing whatever thoughts I was thinking out loud to just like random melodies that I made up. So, I mean, being creative has always been a part of me. And then as I grew older, it progressed from being singing my thoughts and dancing ballet to doing musical theater, which was great because it was this combination of these three things I loved: dance, music, and acting, just all into one art form. And so that became my main thing for a long time. And sort of as I got a little bit older, I started actually writing down my song ideas, and then that started growing alongside the musical theater journey. And that's pretty much where I'm at now, yeah.
So are you still doing both musical theater and releasing music?
Yeah, for the most part. Right now, I'm more focused on music. For high school, for the last 2 years, I went to Interlaken, which is a performing arts boarding school, and I majored in musical theater there, and I graduated last year. Right now, I'm mostly doing music, but I did write the music for a musical that's going to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival this summer.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm in the music side of theater now.
Tell us about this show. What's the theme of it?
It's based on Shakespeare. The idea is all of his characters, he can only publish one play, I should start by saying that. And then to choose his play, he goes to this dream world where all the characters come to life and like compete to be the one play that he picks. And he still can't choose, and at the end he discovers like he should just publish them all on his own terms in the way that he wants, and take his life in his own hands. So yeah.
Oh, that's such an interesting concept and idea. Wow, that's amazing. You wrote the songs and the music for this production.
Yeah.
Was that challenging or did you find it quite easy?
I approached it a lot like how I write my own pop music. The difference was that I thought about like the character's perspective and the plays that they originated from, and as well as like the context of the arc of the play we were writing. But the actual writing of the songs was very similar for me, so it wasn't like super challenging, you know. But it was a very different experience and very fun in that sense. Yeah.
What do you love about performing on the stage in musical theater?
I've always loved storytelling. I think all the arts that I do are very story driven. Well, all art is story driven. And so I love that I get to like step into a different person and kind of see the world from their perspective for a little bit. That's for theater performing, obviously. And then in pop performance, I love kind of doing the opposite and getting to be just purely me on stage and I guess sharing me with a room of people and feeling that connection. It's very grounding and powerful. I don't know, it just performing gives you this feeling that's like nothing else really. And it's beautiful.
I'm sure you remember the show Glee. I remember I was watching a documentary and the directors
Yeah.
were speaking, or the musical director was speaking that in the beginning, they were having challenges with Leah Michelle because her voice was so conditioned for theater, musical theater, and singing pop music or pop songs are very different to musical theater singing. So is it easy for you to switch between those two sort of ways? And can you tell us what is the difference for you between the two?
That is such a fun question. And it was definitely a shock for me when I first started recording music. And you can probably hear that on my first album because I was very musical theater with a touch of classical trained. So it was all about getting that super clear, pure sound, which I do genuinely love. And I love singing like that. But then when I was working with my producer, he would always be like, no, you need to be like more breathy and like we need like this more texture and emotion and these little details that like are not, you know, perfect or technically correct by the standards that I'd been taught. There's a lot of like practical things that were like a bit of a like shock to me when I first started recording. But then I talked to my voice teacher about it actually, and the way she explained it to me was that classical music, it's about technique and like vowel placement and like those things. And then musical theater is about the text. So it's like, what are the words saying? So you need to be very like enunciating and making sure that every single word comes across. And then pop music is like telling the story through the sounds and the choices that you make. So like, are you crescendoing here? Are you like, how are you pronouncing this word? Is this soft? Is this strong? You know, like all those little choices to create the feeling and the emotion of the song. So they're all storytelling, just focusing on different elements of how we use the voice. And so I try to think of it in terms of that.
You referenced you love performing a little bit earlier. I'm that guy that's right up in front. I'm dancing, I'm jamming. I'll take my cell phone out for maybe one or two songs, one or two photos. I notice that people around me these days, they're so busy on their phones and doing whatever they're doing on their phones, filming and other stuff. Now, from your perspective on stage, potentially seeing a bunch of phones instead of eyes, do you not feel that it takes away the experience for the person who's busy with the phone, or it's just where society is at this moment?
Yeah, I think I haven't had that experience yet of performing and there's like a whole bunch of phones. Like I see these videos and there's just like a sea of phones while you're performing. I don't know what that feels like as an artist. That's kind of crazy. But what I have seen is performing and like there's like one or two phones up filming. And I don't really mind the phones filming personally. I think because I do that too sometimes when I'm at a concert. Like I want to be able to go back to that and remember that and see like what choices was the artist making, what can I learn from this and all that. And also just remember the experience. But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of interesting when you see the phones in the audience because that means that this is getting immortalized, right? Like it's like everybody can go back and see this and your mistakes now are documented and everything. And I think that live performance to me is this, it's a living thing. Like it happens once and then that's the past. And then you do it again and it's going to be different. It's going to be completely different, you know? And so it is a little bit interesting to take an art form that at least I think of as this happens once and then it's never going to happen in that exact way again and make that permanent. So that's the one thing that I think about when I see phones in the audience. I'm like, oh, like this has now become something different and new, you know?
Tell us everything around the releases that you have just released, your music, the inspiration behind them, and what can you tell us is coming up?
Okay, well, I've recently released two singles. One is Braveheart was the first one, and that is about I guess sort of like strength and perseverance in the sense of like self-acceptance and not having to change for what other people want you to be.
Yeah.
And then my next single that I just released, which is very related to what we just talked about, is called Get Off Your Phone. It's just about like when you're hanging out with people and then like everybody's just like on their Snapchat or Instagram or whatever, and nobody's actually like talking and connecting, and kind of how that can make you feel, especially if you're not really on those platforms yet and you're just sitting there like, oh, this is fun, you know? So it's kind of just about that. And then there's gonna be, I think, one more single coming out soon, and then the rest of the EP will come out in August sometime. So that's all very exciting.
You said that you had released an album before. So you've released one album and now the next is an EP.
Yes, yeah. I released an album a year or so ago, called Stranded in the Middle, and now this EP is following it up.
How come you decided to do an EP this time?
Well, I do love doing albums, but I love being very thoughtful and intentional about albums, or at least I want to be more so going forward, right? The first album is very much just like the songs I was writing in my bedroom as like a high schooler, and then was like, oh, hey, what if I put out an album? But the next time I want to like really, really like think it through and make it a whole like cohesive world and all that stuff. So this EP for me is, while interim, I had been introduced to a lot of like new producers and songwriters, and I had gone to go and work with these people and explore and make new music, but with more voices in the room. You know, they're great songs and I wanted to release them, but they weren't necessarily like a part of an album concept idea that I had in my head. So I was like, why don't we just make this an EP, something that we can keep learning about who I am as an artist and keep working on building that world and give people more to listen to sort of in the interim while we work on and figure out the next thing.
You referenced that you've had situations recently with new collaborators and there's sometimes been more people in the room. But now, when you first started getting there and there's more people in the room, did you find that overwhelming? Or did you think, okay, this is the situation I'm in now, let me just go with it?
I'm very open to new situations, and I wanted to be in a room and hear what other people had to say and learn from their expertise and all that stuff. Maybe I was a little bit less vocal in like the first few sessions, and now when I go into those sessions, I feel myself feeling more comfortable and more like at ease, just because you get used to what it's like to communicate with people about music and about something that you're creating together. But I will say that like I think in the beginning what was hard about it for me was like when I'm writing by myself, it's so personal because I know exactly what I felt. I know exactly what happened in that moment, and I can just take that and write that into words and it'd be 100% what was going on for me. But when you are working with other people, pieces of their stories and their experiences come in, and it becomes less like exactly your moment and more sort of what is this feeling. It becomes a little bit more, I don't want to say general because it's still deeply personal and like, you know, but it becomes more universal, I guess, which is interesting. Yeah.
I'm gathering you saying because there's more people, it becomes a universal topic that all of you have had experiences with. When it's more you related, it's more diving deeper into that topic.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. I love me a CD. I still budget for my CDs every month. I love the journey of the choice, the booklet, the unpacking, and so forth. I'm not sure if you are aware, there's a massive uptick of physical around the world. I read an article recently that last year in the US, $1.04 billion spent on vinyls last year, the biggest since 1983. 2 years ago in the UK, 5.9 million vinyls sold, the biggest since 1993. Last year in the UK, there's a basket of products they gauge for exchanges on. There needs to be a high number every day for a product to be in the basket, and they monitor for tax purposes. Because of the upsurge of CDs are now back in the basket. The research of all of this is that it's showing it's the teenagers, it's the younger kids diving into this world. Then we have Spotify and all the rest. What are your thoughts of the landscape at the moment?
I love that it's becoming more physical. For one, streaming services, it's so hard to make any money off of that. And of course, you know, you want it to be about the art and as many people to experience this as possible. But I do think it's very nice that it's going in a more physical direction. I personally love that too. I've started listening to cassettes, which is really fun. But actually, on that point, I do want to say that my first album, actually, I released on vinyl. We printed some vinyls and did the whole cover and everything. So that I think is probably still available. And so yeah, I've already been tapping into that world, and I hope that I'll keep doing that because I think it's really fun to have like a physical way to connect with the music and the art, and I love that.
What challenge have you overcome thus far compared to when you started to now that you've learned from?
It's all been a learning process, right? Because I think pop music is like, no one can really teach you what it's like to work with all these people and all that stuff. Or at least for me, it was just something that I learned by experience. I think the biggest place in growth that I've noticed is in the beginning, I would sort of walk into the room assuming that everybody else knew more about this than I did, and that what they thought was probably right. I don't know, I guess I thought that there was a right and wrong answer.
Yes.
So I would sometimes, not do what I knew deep down I wanted to do and just like listen to what other people said and like their advice, which obviously you should listen to advice, but like, maybe too much. And now as I've done this more and become more comfortable communicating with people, I guess sort of learned that just because we disagree doesn't mean that there is a right and wrong answer. They might have done this longer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they know everything, or that there even exists something to know about this, right? Like they could be equally good and just, different taste or whatever, So I've started to trust myself a lot more, and been a lot more comfortable saying no, like I really think that we should do this, which is good.
It is good, because you're setting boundaries.
Yeah.
I love this next game. I know if I had to ask you this question tomorrow or the next day or the next day, I know your answer will be different every time. Now, it's very important to understand I'm not saying favorite. I'm saying in this moment.
Yes.
Once we finish this conversation, if you want to step away and say, okay, I want to listen to 5 other artists, who would those artists be? I've
really been loving Adele right now and Madison Beer. I do love Camila Cabello. Yeah, I love Lizzie McAlpine. It's very like relaxing. And then maybe Billie Eilish. Yeah.
So Hannah, the podcast is listened to throughout the world. As a final message, what would you like to say?
I would like to say that if you have something you want to do in life, you should trust yourself and you should pursue it and you should try to do it. And I think like any little step, any little like thing you can do towards it, you should take, because you never know where it's going to lead you and who you're going to meet and what's going to grow from that. Like my first album, I was just planning to like make it a personal project, and I wasn't planning to jump into and start this like big like pop career or whatever, but then that happened because of the people I met and the conversations that got started by me wanting to record my music. And yeah, so I think you should always go out and pursue what you love and what you want to do to the best of your ability.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Celeb Savant. Please follow Barrett on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Celeb Savant. That's CelebSavant.